Hello and good morning, everyone. This is June. We are week 3 in talking about testing and different ways that you can stay on top of your health in midlife. So, Melissa's here as well. Hi, Melissa.
Hey, good morning.
So, we talked about blood testing, saliva testing, live blood testing. If you missed that video, you can go back. Last week, we got into testing about Dutch hormone. What other stuff were we talking about? Because there's so much. We did the Dutch
Live,
hormone
live blood
panel.
analysis.
Yeah, how to stay on top of your hormones. We talked a little bit about the AO scan that Melissa can do. So we're giving you a lot. And today we want to talk about really important things, especially for women as we get into postmenopause. And that is staying on top of your pelvic floor health and your bone health. So pelvic floor. It's something that is starting to be talked about, which is great. And it's so important. And I know, like, when you're in your 30s and even 40s, it might not be top of mind. Maybe you had a great pregnancy, maybe you had a baby naturally, maybe C-section, but you never maybe had a lot of stuff going on. Maybe you have, like my sister, poor thing. It's a whole other story. But we need to pay attention to pelvic floor. And so one of the best advice I got, and I wish I would have done it earlier, is just go to a pelvic floor specialist. And that's what I did. I went a few years ago, I went to a pelvic floor specialist, and it was very empowering. I did pay out of pocket. It's about $160. But what was really empowering about it is that she helped me do Kegels properly. So that was a big thing. She asked me to do a test and she's like, "You're doing it the opposite way. You're not doing it right. You're not breathing properly." I'm like, "Oh my gosh." So she said, "Don't worry. Most women do Kegels the wrong way." So I was like, "Okay, thank you." She also did a test for my strength down there, not just like, just like pelvic floor strength. And she did it out of 5. And I ended up getting only a score of 2. So she's like, "You need to work on your pelvic floor." And it's not just about, we think of like, oh, sex and a strong, tight vagina. It goes beyond that. We start to think about like leakage, right? As a woman in midlife. Have you ever been like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not going to make it to the," right? How many times of us were like running and like, "Oh my God, my pants," right? So that's what I mean. So that's my first advice. Go to a pal, and even as early as 35, I would say, or if you've had some babies, go and find out, are you doing Kegels right? How strong are you down there? Because she also told me that some women should not do Kegels
I
because
was
they are
just going to say that.
too stressed and
Right.
it's too tight down there, and maybe there's a discomfort. So there's the opposite scale. So that is the first thing that I want to say about pelvic floor and just how empowering it is. And then you can get into really good conversations with it. Like, how's your sex life? She was also a sex, I'm going to say, therapist or coach as well, too. So it was like, "Oh, you're very dry." And she right away said that. She's like, "Ooh, you're really dry down here." I'm like, I know, like the desert. And she's like, "Have you thought about doing like estradiol tablets or creams and maybe talk to your doctor or your naturopathic?" So I did. I started to get some estradiol, which usually doesn't go to the rest of your body. It's just locally. That can really help with dryness. There's also the different creams that you can get. So it's kind of like cream inside, but then also cream on the outside. And it makes sense. Like, think about it, Melissa. We put cream on our face every single day, but
Right.
not our woohoo. Why not? Like, so have you
I
started
guess
doing it?
not yet. That's one of
Okay.
the things I got to do. But it's true. I guess we think of that area, we don't think of it as drying out because we think that area is always, my least favorite word, moist. Right? So we don't, it's not like your skin, like when my hands get dry. So I notice that right away. It feels almost hot and starts to burn if they get really dry. But
Right.
you don't feel that unless you're putting something in there,
Yeah. Yeah,
really.
exactly. Yeah, for sure. So that's what I mean about like finding somebody that's an expert that you can have this open conversation. Do you need something inside? Do you need something outside?
Yeah.
Do you maybe need to, again, we talked about like testosterone, DHEA. DHEA is a precursor to testosterone. Again, thinking about maybe that could help with sex drive, lubrication. And the other thing that we have to think about too with women as we go through our hormone change is the tissue gets thin. And if you do have sex, it can hurt.
Mhm.
It can be
There.
uncomfortable. You can tear. So we want strong tissue. As soon as our estrogen drops to like ground zero, that's one of the biggest changes in a woman, is down in our, vaginal area. And so we need to have more of that conversation. So I wanted to just like have that conversation today is take care of your pelvic floor. And it's not just all about sex. It's about like not pooping yourself every time you go out for a while or peeing your pants. And there's a
I'm
reason
sorry to
why there's a
see.
whole or a sneeze. There's a whole reason why there's a category of adult diapers, right? Poor
Yeah,
valve,
it's
poor.
true.
And there is a company that I have looked into. It's called Eurospot. And they're a franchise and they're showing up right across the country. I first learned about them through a podcast. And then I actually saw them at the women's show a couple years ago down in Toronto, and I actually sat on it. And it's a chair that you sit on, and there is a nurse that actually guides you as to where to sit on it properly. And it's like getting Kegels. Again, you have to make sure that you need Kegels, the first off, that's important. But you sit there and you do like a six pack over time. But she was telling me a lot of stories about how after six treatments for women, they were getting their sex drive back. They weren't having painful sex. They weren't leaking. So
So
a
good.
really good tool for that, right? And
Yep.
then anything else you want to share on the whole pelvic floor? Pelvic floor exercises, right? There's some experts out there that show you how to do proper pelvic floor exercises as well, beyond just Kegels.
Yeah, and it's like any type of exercise, you got to do what is right for you because we've all been taught, oh, Kegels, 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 but
Yeah.
it's actually not good for everyone. So again, you need to know where you're at and what your body needs, and then you start from there and build up.
Yeah.
Don't just
And
do what your neighbor's saying because it may not be
right.
right for you. We're such
Ex-
good sharers of information, right? As soon as we have something that works for us, we want to tell our best friends, and
yeah.
it may not be good for them. So,
Yeah. And then let's move on to bone density. So I got my first bone density test in Mexico about 3 years ago. So I'd have been just over 50, 51 maybe. And I got it all done. And then the lady's like, oh, look at your markers on your left hip. It's actually in the low range for your age. We have to stay on top of it. So I did get a second bone density scan just within the last 6 months here in Canada. And everything has stabilized. It hasn't gone down, but and there's a reason to that because I kind of freaked out. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm only, yeah, and it was only in my left hip, not my right hip, which I thought was so weird and fascinating. Again, this is why it's so important to get your test done because it's like we're all different. And so I want Melissa to share if I was her client and
mhm.
I came to her as a personal trainer and somebody to want to take care of my bone health. Melissa, what would you coach me on? What would be the kind of top things that you would tell me I needed to start to do now?
Strength training, strength training, strength training. I can't. I'm literally on social media. I'm shouting it from the rooftops because women are not strength training for so many different reasons. And here's the cold, hard truth, girls. We start losing bone density at the age of 30. And same with our muscle mass. At the age of 30, it starts to decline if we are not doing things to slow that down. And by the age of 80, on your 80th birthday, you will have lost 50% of your muscle mass if you have not done anything about it.
Right.
Right. So studies have shown that strength training and and then how much muscle you have as a result of that is the biggest factor in determining the quality of your life and the ability to remain independent long term. So I spent my career up until now, you know, inspiring women, motivating. Imagine when this happens, you'll look like this and that. And it's always about what you look like in your clothes and your bikini, getting ready for March break or summer or holidays that you're going on, right? To be able to wear that. And now it's about, do you want to be able to go down on the floor and get back up again with your grandchildren? Do you want to continue to play pickleball? Do you want to be able to climb up on a ladder to reach whatever? Do you want to be able to go on a hike? Do you want to be able to take a trip and do an excursion? Then you need to be strength training now. Like, it is that serious, because it's literally
Mhm.
wasting away if we're not doing anything. And walking is great. We need to do that, but it's not enough. We need to be lifting heavy weights.
Yeah.
And people always say, well, what's heavy? And that's an individual answer, because it depends on where you're at. And you continually improve. As you get stronger, then you increase your weight. But we have to be doing that, and it's a minimum of 2 times per week. It's uh, it's just that important. And you can reverse osteoporosis. You can build muscle at any age. There's studies of
Mhm.
late 80s of people having to use their walkers, and now they don't need to use their walkers. And you may think, well, that's not a big deal. That's life changing.
Yeah.
You can walk so much faster. You don't have to carry this
Right.
clunky item with you. So it literally determines the quality of your life.
Hmm.
And again, so many women don't want to because of, well, they're scared
Yeah.
because they don't know what to do. They've never been in a gym and it is
Yeah.
intimidating, or they think they're going to get bulky. And I'm like, no,
Hmm.
actually train as though you think you're going to get bulky, and then you're actually just going to build some muscle and look
Mm.
better and not be stronger.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of people have a negative experience with exercise as a kid.
Yeah.
I think it's by the age of 13, 65% of kids have had a negative experience in gym class. So,
Hmm.
and they pick teams for whatever, they get picked last, or they're not very good at basketball, and the coach may say something, and as a result, they think, oh, I'm not good,
Mm.
period, at any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And they just think they're too busy. And I'm like, well, if you're too busy to do that now, then you
Mm.
better put aside a lot of time later on when you've lost your independence. You need to wait around for everybody to come and help you.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think is, we never think we're going to be that old, right? We just, we always feel different in our body. And how many people joke, they look in the mirror like, whoa, who's that in the mirror? That's not how I feel, but it is happening.
Yeah.
And this osteoporosis and sarcopenia, which is muscle leaving, is, they're silent diseases, right? We don't
Yeah.
feel that until we fall and break something. Or, and this is so crazy, people are shocked when I share this with them, that sometimes women fall and break a bone, and the doctors aren't sure, was it landing that broke the bone? Or did the bone actually collapse because it was so brittle simply from gravity and holding up her body,
Mm.
that it broke then, which caused the fall?
That's crazy.
Right? So it's,
Yeah.
start today. There's that song, right? People think they have time. We don't have time. You
Right.
need to do something about it now, because it is happening. It is
Yeah.
getting less if we're not doing something about it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be 5 days a week in the gym,
Yeah.
an hour of weights and an hour of
Hmm.
cardio. In fact, that'll probably do more harm than good, but begin where you're at, that you can continue to do that. And that's what I always do with my clients.
Hmm.
What can we do right now? Like, yes, you got to give a little bit to
Yeah.
make this a priority, but you're going to be so happy you did. In 30 days, you're not even going to
Hmm.
recognize the changes that have gone on in your body. It's
Hmm.
so important. So
I
if you,
like the analogy that you've taught me about like heavy lifting, because that one comes up all the time. Is like, well, tell me an example of like heavy lifting. So I'll just give you my personal, and you always correct me when I'm in the gym and I'm taking a picture and I'm lifting a weight. She goes, "That's not heavy enough. If you could take a picture and lift a heavy weight." So it's like, it's taken me a while to get to the strength that I'm at now. So this is just my own example, right? At one time I was lifting 5 pounds and then 10 pounds. And so for a bicep curl for me now, I can do anywhere between a 15 and 20 pound, but I can do that for a long time. Like I can do that. Okay. So if you're the type of person that's lifting weights and you're like, oh, I'm at 10, I'm at 15, I'm at 20. Well, pick up another one that's maybe 5 pounds heavier than that. So now I'm at 25. And now when I'm doing my 25, that is hard and challenging. Like this is what my hand is looking like. And I'll get to 4 and I'm like this. And then when I start to get out of technique, I know that I've really challenged myself. And so you've always given me that advice is like for me now, a 25 bicep curl for me is heavy. So maybe I'm only doing 3 sets of 5 versus, 3 sets of, oh, I can go for 20, 30,
Yeah.
right?
We
So
want
I
to
just want to,
yeah, that's great. We want to keep the number of reps lower. We don't need to be doing that many. You're not building muscle as much either when you're doing really light weights and lots of repetitions, setting yourself up for more chance of injury. Like you're getting fatigued going longer as well, and then you can get
yeah,
sloppier as well. So less, like 5 sets of 5 or 4 sets of 4.
yeah.
And as you increase your weights, you may not be able to do that full. And that's okay. You're going to stay
Yeah,
there until it goes up, and then you increase your weight again, just like you said, start 5s and 10s and
yeah,
yeah.
move up.
But if you've never worked out or you haven't in a long time, please work with a personal trainer because form is everything. People
Yeah.
just think, oh, it's working out. Like I would say, having been in the personal training industry my entire life, it's not really highly regarded, let's say. It's like, oh yeah, she took a weekend course and they like working out in their personal trainer or whatever. It is so much more than that. It can actually be dangerous when you're lifting weights because it's all about the force that's being applied to the joint that's
Mm-hmm.
moving that weight. So it's serious business. So you want to
Mm-hmm.
work out with a trainer that knows what they're doing, that they're all about form and understands women in midlife because we can't work out the same as we did way back when. And if any of you are listening and you need that, I do online personal training. So you can reach out to me. We can have a chat, see if we're the right fit to work together and go from there and get you started getting stronger and protecting your bone health and building muscle.
Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in. So, 2 things you're going to do. You're going to take care of your lady bits, pelvic floor specialist, right? Make sure
Strength
that you're
training.
on track, and then strength training.
Yeah.
And making sure that you know what your bone density is and staying on top of that so that if you do, go back in 6 months, you have a benchmark to where you are heading into this midlife. So thanks for tuning in. And next week we have a special guest on, and I won't give too much away, but all I'm going to say is you won't want to miss the next video on all about our digestive system. Thanks,
Perfect.
Melissa.
Bye, guys.